Hi, and welcome to today's episode of pianoTV. I am Allysia, your host, and today we are going to tackle a question that I am asked probably weekly, or some variation of: what piece should I learn? I have no idea what piece to learn. This is especially a common question that beginners have because there's so much music out there. It's hard to choose where to start. Now, the problem with this question, and the reason that I have a hard time answering it for people, is it's highly individual. One path for one person might not be the same path for another person, and person C could learn completely other music as well. So there's no prescription, do exactly these pieces and you'll become a piano master or whatever. But since it's such a common question, I wanted to at least give some guidance and suggestions to help you out with choosing your own music. So I'm not going to give specific piece recommendations in this video, but I am going to give you guidance in choosing your own pieces. And let me know if you think this would be a good idea. But one thing I was thinking about doing was some online coaching to help people with this one-on-one, because this is the kind of thing I do with my students. If you think that sounds like it could be fun, let me know in the comments, because I haven't really developed that idea. Anyway, this is a long introduction, so let's get started. Here's a common scenario. A relative beginner listens to some music of Chopin, falls in love, and then they decide to learn some Chopin. Problem is, even the easiest Chopin is at an early advanced level. So this hypothetical beginner attempts to learn, say, Chopin's Prelude in B minor. They pour just a ton of time and energy into it, and eventually, they're able to play it. Sort of. Playing it is a struggle. They're focused on the notes and they're not really able to focus on the expression because they're so fixated on getting the notes right. And they have to play it constantly in order to maintain it. Maybe they've had to even spend months learning it, just a single piece and nothing else. This pattern continues, and then maybe after a year, you've only learned 3 or 4 pieces total. That's not very much, and that's a really unproductive way to spend all of those hours of practice time. If you're spending months on a single piece, you're not going to be developing your sight reading skills. And that's one of the most important skills to develop as a piano player. Because what's going to happen is you'll be really fixated on reading the notes at first, but then you'll get comfortable with the notes and you'll really only use this sheet music as a reference. You're not really going to be reading anymore. So if it takes you 3 months to learn a piece, you might only be spending 2 or 3 weeks actually reading, and the rest of the time you're not reading at all. You're not practicing sight reading, which is, I was going to say foolish. That's a little harsh, but I strongly recommend against it. But the thing is learning a really tough Chopin piece is impressive and exciting and glamorous. So I get why people do it. It seems like it would be so much more awesome to play one really tough song than bumble your way through a bunch of easier ones. Actually, it would be the opposite. You wouldn't bumble your way through the easy ones. You would soar through the easy ones and bumble your way through the difficult Chopin piece. I've seen this in my studio time and time again. You will have so much more success at the piano putting your time and effort into learning shorter, simpler pieces than working on just a few behemoth pieces. And if you spend years going through those smaller pieces step by step, years, I meant what I said. You will eventually be much more equipped to deal with that difficult Chopin piece when you finally climb your way to it sequentially instead of just jumping to the top right off the bat. Learning it won't be this enormous struggle. You'll actually find that instead of taking a few months of Herculean effort, it'll just be it'll come together much quicker. You'll start to see patterns in it, which will make it easier to remember, and so on. And with all of that groundwork laid with the easier pieces, your sight reading skills will be infinitely better. So you'll be able to read it at a better clip instead of struggling to read it and having to memorize it as you go because it's so tough to read. And that's something I see people do a lot too. Now, learning a challenging Chopin piece seems on the surface like it would be way more fun than learning all those little beginner pieces. But the opposite actually ends up being true for the most part in reality. With those small pieces, you get to master them and you get to accomplish them at a quicker pace, which gives you this inner feeling of satisfaction and accomplishment. Whereas since you have to struggle with the Chopin piece and grind at it so much, even if you really love the piece to begin with, you might find that after a couple months that love has died. Beginner pieces seem less glamorous at a first glance, but they end up being way more fun to practice, again, because you get to accomplish them quickly without spending huge amounts of time and getting a huge headache from the complexity of it. Learning chopsticks isn't like, it doesn't seem like, ooh, chopsticks, my dream to learn chopsticks, but you will feel good when you can actually tackle it. So you start with chopsticks, and then you get to move on to a slightly more difficult piece, and then a slightly more difficult piece, and you're just like inching your way more and more difficult. And then you'll find by after the span of about a year, you'll be able to look back and see this huge amount of progress. Whereas if you're only learning a few big pieces a year, you're not going to see that kind of, you're going to have that track record. You're not going to be able to look back and see, oh wow, look where I was a year ago, because it'll basically be the same spot. Okay, so now back to the main question. What pieces should I learn on the piano? Short answer is easier ones than you might think, as we've already talked about. One resource that I always recommend, and you've probably heard me talk about this quite a few times already, whether or not you're a part of a music school, I really encourage you to flip through this Royal Conservatory of Music syllabus. It has just a huge amount of music organized by grade and level in a wide variety of styles. So it's not just classical music. There's jazz and pop and all kinds of stuff on here in a variety of genres. If you know nothing about beginner piano music and you don't have a teacher, browsing this list, pretty much everything between a preparatory level to about a grade 2 level if you're a relative beginner, will give you just a ton of ideas for individual pieces and books. One of the very first videos that I did for this channel was my music book recommendations for beginners. So if you want more details than what I'm providing today, check that out. I also did a grade 1 and 2 version if you've been playing for a little bit longer. And I'll have these linked over on the blog. You can find a link to that in the description bar below. As I mentioned, each student I teach ends up with a customized learning path, but there are some consistencies, especially when they're beginners, because there's just less music for beginners. So I almost always use the Piano Adventures method books, specifically the lesson technique and theory ones. The main series if they're a child, and then the adult series for, obviously, adults. We go through these books in order since there are music lessons inside, so we're not going to jump around in these books. We go through them sequentially. Christopher Norton Connections books. I almost always use these ones for at least a few years, starting at the grade 1 level. Mainly because people just really like them. They have appealing tunes. It doesn't matter if you're young or old. There's music in here that you're going to enjoy. It sounds more sophisticated than the level. And I also like how each book is leveled. So there's a book 1 for grade 1, book 2 for grade 2, and so on. You can use these books all the way up to a grade 8 level if you like them, which I think is really awesome. Now with these books, we learn them out of order. We just kind of pick and choose whatever they want to learn, or maybe there's like a particular technique I want them to learn, so we'll pick music like that. And then we have scales, arpeggios, and etc. I generally don't like to spend too much time on piano technique, but we always spend at least a few minutes each lesson on this stuff. You don't necessarily need a book, but the Brown Book of Scales is a classic, so if you are going to pick up one, I would recommend that one. And a lot of these techniques and exercises are actually in the Piano Adventure series as you go along. So we don't dwell on these, but every student of mine does do some scales and arpeggios and so forth. In addition to the aforementioned books, we'll usually pick a random for fun book. We'll usually have a fun section of the lesson where we'll play through a few pieces from a few books and they select what book appeals to them the most, and then they pick that up and we learn it in the next year. It's a fun part. It's a fun thing I like to do at the end of the year when everyone's getting distracted and bored anyway. It's always fun to look at new music. There's a bit of a debate over whether or not to take a classical approach or a modern approach when learning the piano. And I happen to be a fence sitter. I think there's pros and cons on both sides. So classical music is obviously really awesome, but there's not a lot of great beginner classical music, especially outside of the Baroque and classical eras. So you will find some easy Bach, some easy Mozart, some easy Beethoven. You'll find simple dances and stuff, but you won't find a lot of easy expressive music, like romantic stuff. A lot of romantic era composers like Chopin and Liszt, you can't really play until you've been playing piano for quite a while. So that's where I find modern music is really valuable, because you can have these pieces that are with engaging titles like Starfish at Night that are really interesting and weird and create a soundscape that you can't find in classical literature at a beginner level. I generally like to teach a variety. So if a student has 3 pieces on the go, one might be, say, a Baroque piece like a Bach piece. One might be a modern jazzy piece like from Christopher Norton Connections. And maybe a third piece is an etude, something by Carl Czerny perhaps. Something that is going to help their technique and develop their piano skills. And that would be what I would consider like a well-rounded assembly of music. Most people seem to do best with a few pieces at a time in a variety of genres and styles like that, but some people thrive doing deep dives, and I'm kind of like that myself personally. So say you discovered a Bach book, like Bach's set of preludes or inventions or something like that. Instead of just learning one here or there, the deep dive person is really gonna want to become obsessed with it and learn all of the preludes or all of the inventions and just get absorbed like that. And I really like doing that with musical albums like Bach's Preludes, or if I'm looking at a McDowell book right now that I just want to like work the whole way through. I'm working through Grieg's lyric pieces right now. I really just like getting focused, but if you're not that obsessive kind of person, you're probably going to find that approach boring, and you'll probably want the variety of a few different genres all at the same time. So far, I've given you general recommendations, but not specific music recommendations. Just again, like I said, a person's individual path is far too individual for that. What I want to accomplish with this video is to just give you tools to do your own exploration. And again, I've said this a million times, but check out the Royal Conservatory syllabus. There's a huge amount of music suggestions for your level if you look at that. Now, if you're really stuck, I recommend one of the Royal Conservatory books, like the repertoire books. There's repertoire books for ABRSM as well. These are handy because they have a wide variety of genres all in one book at the same level. So if you have no idea what to choose, a book like that will give you a lot of ideas. Say you're playing music from the RCM Grade 1 book, and you come across Anne Crosby's Robots. You immediately love it because who doesn't love this tune? So you look it up in the syllabus and you see that it's from a book called In My Dreams. You look up this book to see what other pieces are in it, how difficult it is, etc. Check out some YouTube performances of the pieces. You decide it's awesome and then you buy it. This is how I would recommend finding new music if you're not sure what to learn, if you're kind of stuck. Maybe you start playing pieces from In My Dreams and you realize that though Celebration is totally playable, Can't Catch Me is like a little out of your league. That's okay. You can come back and try it later, maybe half a year, and so forth. They also give you an idea of how difficult a book is. So for the In My Dreams example, you can see that it says early intermediate, levels 1 to 3. So if you're already playing lots of music at about a grade 3 level, you should be able to tackle this whole book no problem. But if you're playing a lot of music at a grade 1 level, some of this might feel like a big challenge and you might have to wait before learning it all. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I am thinking about exploring coaching to help people with this topic. Now, I'm saying the word coaching specifically because I'm not at a point where I want to do online lessons, but so it wouldn't be like traditional lessons. It would just be like a few one-off sessions to help plan like specific pieces and kind of like a musical learning path. It's what I do with my students every year. So every summer before the beginning of the school year, I'll sit down and do like a brief map of what the student's going to learn over the course of the year. And then we'll start filling in the blanks with specific pieces that I pick, and I'll leave room for pieces for them to pick as well. But with some very general goals like complete this book series at X time, or pick 3 pieces for the music festival in March, stuff like that. Anyway, if you think that you would be interested in this idea, just let me know. Because again, I won't pursue it further if no one cares about it, if it just seems like a boring idea. But I actually think it could be a lot of fun and a little bit different from piano lessons, which I still haven't figured out how I would be able to, I'm not sure if I'm ever really going to go down that road. We'll see. Never say never. But anyway, it's a long intro and a long outro. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up if you did. You can come hang out with me over on socials. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next video. And you come across Anne Crosby's, and you come across, no, don't do that.